First of all, let's give Wilfredo a hand. Serious attention to detail there. Called me this morning and wanted to know what color socks I was going to wear. And come on, man. I just love that. Nobody asked what color socks I wear. So back again, they found out I was Caribbean and they gave me 2 jobs today. Audience is, little tougher this afternoon than you were this morning. So back again, and so this is the final panel of the day. This panel is entitled For-Profit, Nonprofit Partnerships to End the Housing Insecurity Crisis in New York City. And I'm really excited because we got folks who have tons of practical experience at building and financing housing projects of different kinds. And from my perspective, what New York City does better than any other city is really execute the public-private partnership to do projects of scale. And so we have folks here who've been doing that for quite some time and really doing it well. And so what I want to do, instead of reading everybody's name, is I'm going to have each of you introduce yourselves and tell a sentence or two about sort of your background, if you would. Starting with you, Brian.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. Brian Kelly, president of the Gotham organization. Have been working in community development for over 20 years, really focusing on public-private partnerships, investing in building mixed income and affordable housing, traditionally anchored by civic, commercial and retail uses, but housing density and attainable housing being the ultimate driver for feasibility. So with government, not-for-profits, joint ventures, and complex is our recipe because complexity creates opportunity.
Thank you, Brian. Jennifer?
Thank you, Craig. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for coming back after lunch. That's so important. I am Jennifer White-Reed. I am the Chief of Staff and Senior Advisor at the Urban Resource Institute, URI. And I got into the field of nonprofit through legal services. I started as a legal services attorney representing survivors of domestic violence in family court back in the late 90s. I know I don't look the part.
Yes.
And then spent the last 22 years working with URI, overseeing their domestic violence residential and legal programs, and just last year transitioned to become chief of staff. So just an honor to be with you here today and to be able to see such friendly faces. And I know there's a lot of magic that will come from us gathering today.
Lauren?
Hey everybody, I'm Lauren Connors, the SVP of Development at the New York City Housing Development Corporation. We, everything we do is a public-private partnership, and we fund the preservation and new construction of affordable housing. Prior to working at HGC, I oversaw the new construction programs in our sister agency, HP.
Andrew? Who turned your mic off?
So, I'm Andrew Warren. I am a senior vice president here at TD Bank. Thanks everybody for coming to our offices today. I run the credit management group for TD Bank. So I run all of the underwriting and the portfolio management for the affordable housing portfolio across the footprint. Whenever there's a community development lending opportunity that runs through my team, we've got a few folks in the audience today here. I've been in affordable housing for over 21 years. Brian and I were actually founding members of the Young Leadership Council for the New York Housing Conference until we were not allowed to use that title. We aged out. But I've spent time on the ground in communities. I've also been on the syndication side for loan development tax credits. I was a developer for 4 years. And coming here, I founded this team about 8 years ago in TD Bank. And we do about $1 billion to $1.2 billion of financing for about 5,000 units a year across 15 states and DC.
That's amazing. I don't want to alarm you, but I don't think those socks are TD green. Just saying. Rachel? Yeah. No, that was rhetorical. No response required there.
Again, I wait for maybe an opportunity to rebrand, you know. I'm Rachel Goodfriend with the Ametrine Group. We were formerly known as A. Larabear Consulting. I've been with the firm for a decade. Like you, Kirk, affordable housing is all I've ever done. We're a full service firm. We do financial consulting and sort of become a nonprofit's development arm if they don't have in-house development staff. And we're working with URI on projects, with TD on projects. So super excited to be here for the conversation.
Thanks, Rachel. So, yeah, we could give them a hand. So, for anybody who's listening to the podcast, there's a phrase I use a lot. Housing is a bundle of goods and services. It's not just the literal space you live in. That we need to have amenitized communities where people can shop, parks, recreation, etc. And the first project we're going to really talk about, or I'm going to have Brian talk about, is the Innovative Urban Village, which is a partnership between Christian Cultural Center, Gotham, and then finally our company, which the past A.R. Bernard and Brian brought in a little bit later on. But I think it's a perfect example of the concept of housing being a bundle of goods and services, that whatever you like about your favorite suburb, Montclair is a favorite suburb of many, we should make that what we see when we do housing in East New York, Brownsville, and the Bronx. And so, Brian, could you talk to us a little bit about, the Innovative Urban Village?
Absolutely, Kirk. I think the first thing when you talk about any opportunity is how did you get there? So about 8 years ago, I got a phone call from probably the last person that would step into church or actually make their way to heaven. It's my father-in-law. And let's just say he's in purgatory. He says to me, get in an Uber and come out to Christian Cultural Center. There's 10.5 acres of land, and I want you to meet the pastor. I'm a developer. I'm like, 10.5 acres of land? Like, how quick can I get this Uber? So, as a mid-30s, young and ambitious, up-and-coming developer, I went out there, but for once I listened more than I talked. And what I listened to was a pastor who was part of changing the fabric of East New York, investing in East New York in the mid-90s, and who shared with me the sentiments of the community as to what his aspirations were to accomplish for the community. And so I would say there were 3 or 4 meetings, 5 meetings, just talking and listening and hearing about many of the challenges that the community faced. And one that I would say is very compatible to the work URI does, is he said, Brian, there was a member of our church who went to work a late night shift at McDonald's one night and left the children home. And when she left, we'll call it the violent boyfriend, burned the house down and the 3 kids died. He said, so when we develop 2,000 units of housing one day or whatever we come up with, we're gonna do 24/7 childcare so that never happens again in this community. So we sat down and we talked and just I'll describe what the project is, but any idea comes with what the challenges are. Livable, walkable, the idea of creating something in East New York, the urban village of a Jane Jacobs style way of living, like Kirk said, the Montclair. Really, truly fresh food, medical, real employment opportunities, tech, IT, workforce development, home ownership. You didn't want to warehouse poverty, so you want to really mix incomes. Didn't want to do development of all units for everybody that's making $15,000 to $20,000. And so the more and more we talked, he said, I want to develop a village. He says, and our congregation wants to develop a village, but we needed a trusted partner. We came up with the Innovative Urban Village, which we formulated also wasn't a sale. This was a joint venture. Christian Cultural Center, Gotham, and Monadnock were partners to own the land, to build the housing, to build a community, and hold it hopefully forever. So we created the Innovative Urban Village out of this joint venture, which also another complication of the zoning didn't support it. So we spent 5 years and at least 100 voluntary community meetings, sitting, I'm fortunate to describe it, but there aren't meeting places in the NYCHA residences. So we sat in a boiler room at Linden Houses to meet the tenant association. We met at churches. We met at voluntary community board meetings. We met with labor. We met with homeowners, you name it, 100+ meetings, intaking feedback from the community to create what is the urban village, what it looks like, what the heights of the buildings are like, what the uses are, what the income bands are, how much home ownership, senior housing, domestic violence survivors, etc. And so the urban village in this joint venture addresses not social services, which we learned is the wrong word and the wrong way of thinking, but how to create amenities for a community for prosperity. And so Pastor always says to Kirk and I, the way up is not out, it's in. So we tried, and we are now fulfilling the vision of creating these possibilities of the urban village, which will be over 10 years, 4 to 5 phases, 2,000 units of housing, at least 100 to 200 units of home ownership. Will include a daycare facility, 3 acres of publicly accessible open space, 200 units of senior housing, housing for incomes as low as $15,000 to $20,000, all the way up to $140,000. So we went to the community board and some elected officials were saying, well, all the income needs to be for everybody making $20,000 to $50,000 because that's what everybody makes in East New York. We said, well, that's not a fact.
Right.
We went to the community board, and the community board said to us, we don't want all $20,000 to $50,000. We want, if someone next door making $125,000 lives next door to someone making $25,000, then there will be a trend that everybody makes $125,000 because they see the way up. And community board members say, I didn't work. And community board members said, I didn't work hard my whole life for my daughter to go to college so that she has to move to North Carolina. She just finished law school. She now makes $85,000 and she should be able to afford to live in our community.
Exactly.
And so this feedback reinformed the things that Pastor told Kirk and I, and which is why we fought so hard for. And we're thankful to our partners at HPD and HDC and HFR and HCR who aren't here today, Goldman Sachs that did the first phase, URI as our partners on the first phase for the DVI survivors, and now in the second phase, which will be JP Morgan and HDC and HPD, which is we went out and spent millions upon millions upon millions of dollars with no promises, no guarantees we would ever close, all on a vision. And thank you. And because of that vision, I think it was contagion that folks that said, we're going to get on the train because they're going to keep going. And so Kirk and I and Pastor and our partners, including URI, got on board in the first phase, 386 apartments, 2 buildings segmented by a new private street, beautifully designed buildings by Practice for Architecture and Urbanism, is in the ground. Foundations are nearly done. And the second phase, and that phase will include the fresh grocer. And over the years, one of the few people were saying, we want fine dining. So we're trying to figure out, not fast food, we want fine dining. So we're looking for a really high quality restaurant. And the second phase, which pairs really well with our partnership on URI for the first phase, is we're going to have a 24/7 childcare facility, which is an unbelievable. It's an unbelievable compliment to house families, especially mothers who were subject to domestic violence, to now not only have a new home, but have a place next door that they can have their child taken care of. With walk-in medical as our target for the other retail use. So in 18 months from finishing the acronym of ULURP, which is torturous, we will be in the ground on 900 apartments and have closed on $750 million of new development.
It's amazing. So I know, Wilfredo, where are you? I know you're losing your mind because we're past, that. I'm not even looking. I'm not looking. So, you are, as Brian pointed out, URI is a really important partner of ours on IUV. And so, Jennifer, I want you to talk about what URI's role is on IUV, and this just generally the evolution of you, Nat, and your team being involved in projects like this.
Absolutely. I first want to start by saying we are deeply grateful and honored to partner with the Christian Cultural Center, Brian and Kirk, and their exceptional teams on this transformative project. It really is
Thank you.
an exciting opportunity for us. And our mission at URI is rooted in the belief that everyone deserves a home that's not just safe, but is affordable and stable and supportive, so that people can live with dignity and respect and be able to rebuild their lives. And so this partnership really reflects our shared commitment to create spaces that are healing and thriving and supportive to survivors of domestic violence and those who experience homelessness. I know that together we're going to pave the way of lasting and meaningful change for those who really need these services. So when the Gotham team reached out and shared that we had the opportunity to operate supportive services for 94 units of housing dedicated to survivors of domestic violence, we didn't hesitate to say yes. We recognize this as an opportunity to extend the reach of our mission and to have a greater impact in the community. And URI recently developed a theory of change that aims to have a more lasting impact in the community by looking at three particular components. One, increasing safety, increasing housing security, and also increasing economic justice. And so when you look at supportive housing, investing in supportive housing addresses all three of those critical priorities for us. We know that investments in supportive housing reduce the number of people experiencing homelessness. We also know that domestic violence is a driving factor for homelessness. We know that it's a leading cause of homelessness. When you look at the research, nationally, 80% of women with children experiencing homelessness also experience domestic violence. And about 57% of all women experiencing homelessness report domestic violence as the immediate cause of their homelessness. And so for over 40 years, as you heard from Nat Fields earlier, we've been working to end domestic and gender-based violence. And as the largest provider of domestic violence residential services in the country, we serve over 1,800 individuals on any given night. And our services span from intervention to prevention work to direct services. But we know all too well from working with our clients that they need more affordable, supportive housing options in the community to support their independence and self-sufficiency. We also recognize, and as I look around the room, especially for providers who are in the domestic violence shelter space, people are on different journeys when it comes to understanding how to support permanent housing. So people are very experienced and have been doing this work for a long time. Others are new to this field and are trying to figure out, how do I work with a developer? And I think this partnership model that we have is a good way for folks to have impact. You are leveraging, as we are, our expertise when it comes to providing services, and we're partnering with a developer who has a different level of expertise that complement the work that we do. And we know from the materials that I've seen in terms of this project that they've described the innovative urban village as an ecosystem of opportunity in which community members can live, grow, and have access to the tools and amenities needed to thrive. Well, our work approach to supportive services aligns with this vision. Survivors of domestic violence experience profound challenges as they look to rebuild their lives. And so what we want to do is develop supportive services that are comprehensive, that center around safety, empowerment, immediate needs, and also long-term resilience. So we've sort of grouped the services that we're offering in 5 different buckets. The first is safe and secure housing. We're certainly going to be creating an environment together where survivors can feel protected and begin to begin to healing process. Second, comprehensive wraparound services are so critical, such as trauma-informed counseling, case management, economic empowerment services. We're going to focus on workforce development, access to health and behavioral health services, wellness programs, and children's services. Third, we want to ensure that there are specialized resources for diverse populations, right? Our clients come from all walks of life and sometimes have intersecting identities. And so we always want to tailor services to meet them where they are. Fourth, pet-friendly housing. I don't know if some of you are aware of our PALS program, or People and Animals Living Safely program. A signature feature of URI's programs is to ensure that families with pets are able to live and thrive together. We see that pets are part of the family and are part of a way to offer comfort for folks in their healing journey. And then lastly, fifth, I would say community building initiatives. It's so important to promote a sense of connection and belonging and peer support in these programs. And it's part of the healing process. Our case managers and other clinical staff will work alongside our survivors to develop individualized service plans with goals that will promote independent living and sustainable self-sufficiency. But the cornerstone of our work really is dignity, right? We want to ensure that survivors deserve the opportunity to really think about how they're rebuilding their own lives with respect and a sense of agency. And so every survivor's journey is different and unique. And we want to make sure that we are partners to them, offering them resources that they need to rebuild their lives. And so just to wrap up, as I look that way, if you will.
You're going to give him an aneurysm.
Survivors' reaction and experience when living in this type of community. I think the project addresses housing instability, it addresses domestic violence, it addresses the revitalization of an entire community. And I know that they will experience joy, excitement, and a sense of peace at this campus. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. So, Ahmed, we only have time for you to tell us your name and where you got those shoes, brother. That's it.
I know that we could cite and direct, but I am not going to say another word before I mention how comfortable these chairs are.
There you go.
It is very hard to be sharp. I'm so sorry. I'm my name's Ahmed Tagani. I'm the first deputy commissioner at HPD Housing Preservation Development. Really? We're happening in green people. So what do? We create, we preserve, we protect housing. We think about the communities we invest in and how that housing goes further to create the kind of environment, the kind of goals that those neighborhoods want. We've had the good fortune, at least over the last 10 years, to have a very strong relationship in East New York, that you're working very closely with CB5, whether it be the Brownsville plan, 2,500 units, over $1 billion worth of work that we're doing in Starrett City over the last couple of years. We've financed. There's a lot of different gateway. I know we can't get to all these projects, but if you look at the history of East New York, you have a constituency who are amongst the strongest fighters and most eloquent and direct advocates for what they want to see to be the future of New York. They represent for myself and a lot of the colleagues at HPD, the kind of partners that we need to have in order to get the kind of wins we need to see for the city to continue to be available for the future generation. So this is just a thank you, appreciation note for just CB5 in East New York for helping be fantastic partners in this work. Particularly on this project, I would say that we have had, we are faced often with how do we continue building slowly over time in a thoughtful way. more often than not, we don't see the kind of multi-phase comprehensive project that's being described here today. But the Christian Culture Center, you would not expect anything less. They have been a fountain of inspiration and investment in this neighborhood for a very long time. The vision that they and development team as a whole put together, listening to community district needs statements, going to those meetings. This was a private site dealer, so HPD wasn't directly involved, but they took the time to make sure that we at every step knew what was going on so that we could be prepared to work with them and they can make the promises they made to the community whole. They can make them real and come up with deliverable timelines that the neighborhood could see because we could partner with them on that. We had, and this is one of those situations where, and Lauren, my colleague, will talk about more. It was so big, so important that the state got involved as well. So you'll see. This is not something that we do often enough, partly because there's so many needs around the state as a whole, but the state, the governor's office thought it was critical that they were part of this process too. And so you see in phase one, it's a combination of using, scarce bond resources from the state, scarce capital resources from the city, and we're going to continue to team up and make sure that we move this project along because that's how important it is not only checking off housing needs for the neighborhood, but it's delivering the kind of services that the city is responsible for making sure that the people of East New York have. I think that the other thing that I just wanted to make sure I talked about here was that we as an agency, especially under Mayor Adams, have been very committed to seeing where we can go with our faith-based partners. So many of these institutions have houses of worship that have been gravitational centers for these neighborhoods, but because of wear and tear, because of the same kind of cost and maintenance issues that our whole portfolio is seeing, the money is not available to repair those buildings the way they should. And additionally, they see the housing crisis as dire as we do. They see that they have a role, an obligation to do it. So they're coming for support. They're coming for financing. This is millions of square feet. The Furman Center recently did a study that talked about both in hard land ownership and development rights, millions of square feet that could possibly be used for mixed income housing across the city. With HBD, going since 2015, we have financed 5,000 units with faith-based institutions. We have another 1,700 in the pipeline right now. We've been able to now put together a comprehensive plan where we have a direct intake for our faith-based institutions so that we are getting all their questions answered, maybe more so than any other partners in the development space. Thank you. Any other partners in the development space. How do I start this is harder for them than others. So we have put a comprehensive sort of SWAT team so that they can start the first step off more complete and more full. They come in through the pipeline, they work with us, we bring in outside partners like List and Enterprise and Bricks and Mortals, working as a group to make sure that they have technical assistance referrals, access to ideas how to get pre-development loans. These are things that we've been working on. We're continuing to build out. We'll soon be releasing a new training series of modules and webinars so that they can get expert opinion support from other agencies. Not only HPD. The business of developing housing comes from making sure that we're streamlining the different pain points. DOB, DEP, LPC, where landmarks are involved, all of those agencies have committed themselves to make faith-based development something that's easier to do in the city of New York. There's like 1,500 other things I want to say, but you gave me the sign.
Yeah, you remind me of my family members. Come late to dinner and eat more than anybody else, but damn, you got another 20 minutes. You want
This project is a fantastic opportunity for me to give back to the community, and we're just lucky to be part of it. So
Thank you. I know we blew apart. You all right? I know. Lauren?
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more on a technical micro level than Ahmed about how these affordable housing projects get the funding they need to be built. HDC, I mentioned before, offers financing for the preservation, rehab, and new construction of affordable housing. We also fund some public housing. We often partner with HPD. We provide senior subordinate financing for these developments on a tax-exempt basis. HDC is regularly one of the largest, if not the largest, multifamily housing bond issuers in the country. We have a portfolio, an asset management portfolio of 300,000 units that we oversee in the city. So that just shows our commitment to affordable housing. Nearly 300,000 units have been financed and are overseen by HGC. We also are committed to funding supportive housing with partners like URI and other service providers around the city. In the last 10 years alone, we've financed more than 11,000 units of supportive housing in the 5 boroughs. The supportive housing projects are often paired with other rental assistance forms. So the 1515 program, which also has offered rental assistance and service funding, the ESHI program, or maybe something like Section 8 vouchers go into these deals to support the supportive housing component. Projects generally come to HDC a few months before they're ready to close on financing, which means they've probably been in the works for many years. Up until that point, they've done their rezonings, they've done pre-development, they've been working with HPD probably for many years before they even come to HDC. We're usually the last stop before a project is ready to close and start construction. I think what you see up here is a really good example of the partnership and team it takes to get to a financial closing for a new affordable housing project. You have your developers, Kirk and Brian, who bring the projects. We have our service providers like URI, who are part of the deal and there to support the supportive tenants to make sure they thrive in permanent housing. We have HPD, who often helps our projects really get through the pre-development process. They talk about things like affordability levels or community amenities, or they really sort of help shape the vision for the projects. And they also provide supportive financing. Then you have HDC, which provides senior and supportive financing. And then we have the bank, which often provides debt or equity. And then consultants who often work, especially with our nonprofit partners who maybe aren't developers as their first job, but want to develop affordable housing, would partner with somebody like Rachel. So when a project comes to us, we will work with the project to identify what is the appropriate source of financing, how much financing the project can support, what are maybe some other sources. Maybe it's HPD, maybe it's equity, and maybe it's a state program that the developer would have to apply because it's competitive. So we work to put together a capital stack to help sort of unlock the financing for the building, and then we close on financing. HDC monitors the construction process, and then we really keep the project in our portfolio forever. We asset manage it. We ensure regulatory compliance, and we ensure LIHTC compliance. And so we help with financing, and all the way through the lifespan of the project, we ensure it stays affordable, and we ensure it continues to run and operate smoothly.
Lauren, thank you. TD has been an instrumental partner on a lot of things we've done, and we closed a senior project in East New York with TD that Andrew worked really hard on, 184 units of senior housing with a community facility, not a half a mile from RUV. So Andrew, talk a little bit about the work you guys do generally, so folks understand.
Yeah, so let me maybe open up and say, why would a bank like TD Bank invest in supportive housing? Why would we do this, right? This is an interesting perspective on credit, right? So for most of us, you typically don't see me on a panel, especially this close to December. You typically lock us in our holes until we get our approvals done. But I think for what we do at the bank, and I'll shout out some folks out. I think Matt Schatz, Orville Cruz, lending and investing here in New York. There are some true believers in the bank. We have a community impact plan. There are people that really spend a lot of time understanding what supportive housing is, how it operates, how it's funded. I remember sitting there 8 years ago with Rebecca Sauer at the time, working through ESHI for the first time and understanding what that program looks like. I think here in New York, we've got some real visionary people on the development side, absolutely, but also on the government side, whether that's HPD, whether that's HCC, when you've got the state agencies involved. There is a public support that gives us a lot of comfort here. And these are risky projects. I think the development side is always easy. You guys make it easy because you guys are excellent builders. But when you're looking at a supportive housing project, it really, this is in some ways experimental, right? The populations that you're serving, the underserved, the vulnerable people, the outcome that happens if this fails is homelessness, hospital, jail, institution or worse, right? And I think here at PD, we actually understand that. We've made a strategic decision to work in the space. And I think it is that public-private partnership. The fact that even though we know we're taking the risk on the development side, that the agencies stand behind this. And we've got good backing. If you think about the Medicaid redesign team that existed, was trying to fund these programs initially. Think about what the state's done here, what the city's done for subsidy programs. There is a lot of backing that gives us comfort here. And I want to make sure that we call out this project that you folks are talking about today is an absolute amazing example of community development. I work in the affordable housing space, right? Affordable housing is, I think, personally, the foundation of community development. Bring people into movements, right? So they can create economic development. So that dollars can then be created as well and generated. And I think one thing to call out for your project specifically, as a parent of a 3-year-old and a 7-year-old who's in schools in New York City, having a daycare on site so that people can actually have consistent childcare is absolutely connectable. I think it's going to be and when you look at what you guys just or building, or what you've done over the past decades here in New York, one of the things that I will also call out is this is challenging to operate. It's challenging to manage. We at TD are probably one of the largest investors in the supportive housing space, not just in New York. And I think, I've run across 15 states. Supportive housing elsewhere used to be housing for people with disabilities. And there really wasn't a service enriched background that existed or that ecosystem that existed. We have an awesome system here in New York where the nonprofit and for-profit entities come together and work really well in a good symbiotic relationship. That's not something that's existed or something that gets funded elsewhere in the same way. But between the public-private partnership and the nonprofit for-profit partnership, I think it works great. I think it's been successful, and I hope we can get more.
Great, thank you. Rachel, could you talk a little bit about the work you do in the consulting area in the company?
Sure. So again, from Emmetry Group, and we work with for-profit and not-for-profit clients, but primarily nonprofit clients. And we work with groups like URI and other nonprofit organizations that some for the first time are doing development work. And we really enable nonprofits to become real estate developers, owners, and operators. And we see, that's important for many reasons. But I guess just to point out a couple of the reasons, one is that the nonprofits are going to be experts in delivering on their mission, right? The extremely well thought out mission of URI and other orgs. It needs to be manifested into the actual building that's built at the end of the day. So when you're making real estate development decisions, the process can be a little bit different if a for-profit is developing it versus a nonprofit who is in control of those decisions along the way. Right. So by giving nonprofits the capacity to be their own developers, we help make that happen. Another important thing to think about is, on these real estate development projects, the affordable housing and the shelters, there is developer's fee that's earned. And by working with a nonprofit as the developer, those developers' fees go back to the nonprofit. So it creates a feedback loop system of reinvesting the city, the state, the resources back into the mission of the not-for-profit. And I think that, that's extremely important. A lot of nonprofits, that would be the only unrestricted cash that they ever earn. And that is super important to have if we're asking nonprofits to be innovative. There's, on a large scale innovations that we help nonprofits achieve, like you were talking about before, of shelter development in the city has been for a long time extremely lucrative for for-profit landlords. And I just have to give my colleague, Christine Chisholm, a shout out. She was on the earlier.
Where's Christine? Dishes.
Christine was a college hero for 10 years ago. We she was with VRC at the time. I know Nicole at VRC is keeping that ship afloat now. But we worked to convince the city that it was important to reorient resources away from the for-profit landlords earning, rents and fees on shelters into nonprofit-led development. And the VRC show was a co-located shelter supportive and affordable housing building in the Bronx. It was the first new construction co-located nonprofit developed, owned, operated of the time. And I think that it pushed the conversation towards doing that on other projects. And I think the services that we provide at our consulting and development firm not only, support these innovations that are in the press releases, but also we become the champion for the nonprofit to achieve innovations that can be as boring as reorienting, underwriting standards. And Lauren, stay with me here. But sometimes HPD, HTC, and the different underwriting standards can maybe not match up with what the nonprofit needs to keep these buildings operating and quality and lasting for the long term. So Ametrine Group really provides those services to help be sometimes the peer mediator of all of these players that you see, and just help do the financial calculations and the storytelling to get all of the different parties on the same page, because at the end of the day, we're all trying to provide beautiful homes for people to live in.
Rachel, thank you. Well, Fredo said we have time for 1.5 questions. So one, thank you to everybody here for sharing what they're working on and what their perspective is. I want to open it up for a couple of questions. So any questions? This brother right here got a question. Florsheim, right? I'm assuming you're going to ask where Ahmed got those shoes.
Shoes are great. I'd like to touch on some of the other topics. Specifically, how is this accessible for the nonprofit? But actually, all of you touched on this. But the nonprofit that has the vision, has the ideas, but does not have an internal team whatsoever. Is this the place to start, or should we?
Yeah. So that, first of all, that's a great question, brother. I get that question once a week because Rachel and Amy and the team you have done such a great job at that, and I want you to address that question.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, we are one place to start, 100%. And hopefully there's others out there too. But the thing you have to think about from the beginning, and when you're talking to a consultant or a partner, is there's the reality of an organization needing like a balance sheet, right? Like needing money in the bank to be a real estate developer. And then there's the other side of like the drive and the mission to accomplish it. So consultants like me can help either if it's an organization that has a lower balance sheet, lower bank account, we can help match make between maybe a mission-driven for-profit that would be the money in the bank partner, but help you form a partnership that is protective of the organization's goals and mission. Or we have many a time, like I said, help nonprofits become a real estate developer for the first time if there are resources that allow the organization to do that, and all they need in the missing link is the capacity and knowledge.
So Ahmed wanted to address that too.
I would, plus everything that was said, I would add that, from HP's perspective, we have to obviously come at this with a fair and balanced approach, but we have tried to put information, related to owner reps or development partners, MWBE developers, supportive housing developers that have done this work and have gone for some vetting. So you'll find on our website what we call our pre-qualified lists of development partners across different spaces and building programs. What I should have said as a technical because Lauren covered all the technical things that are out of time, is that when you think about the building that you want to build, you're also thinking about the program you want to build. HPD and HCC, HFA, and HCR at the state level have different building program term sheets that lay out for you what you can and cannot do, with the money subsidized, isn't subsidized. Then you think, once you figure out your building program, you can start looking for partners who do this work, and HPD has some pre-qualified lists where you can start having phone calls, coffee, interviews, talking about your vision, seeing if your vision matches with their vision, thinking about those questions. There are other questions if you're a faith-based institution, because you have to get the buy-in and the consent of the larger congregation. There are things that you have to go through at the Attorney General's level, etc. And then the other thing I would say is, if once you start getting past that piece of it, you can start working through the nuance of working with partners through HPV. So you can meet with us very early in the process. We do intake meetings. We can talk to you about what we need or what we don't need. On our public sites, we try to come up with an even more open avenue. Our projects since 2019 on public sites have acquired an MWBP or nonprofit partner to be 25% of that partnership. We are hoping that increases the pool of nonprofit partners who are involved in our public site projects. And so in many areas where they are looking to be part of those public site projects, we have done already 2 to 4 months of community engagement. We put out a community vision plan. We encourage nonprofits to come to those meetings to see what the neighborhoods say they want to see in that project. They often see the developers who are interested in petitioning to be part of those projects. And we see a lot of relationships formed as part of the application teams that go into that RFQ work. And whether you win or don't win, the experience of being part of those teams helps set you up for the next time to compete for a public site or even go forward with a private site. There's a couple of different ways. Yeah.
So
Say real quick, but how much or do we have to pay to get started? That's what I wanted to know, especially like
so what hey brother, what I'm gonna yeah. So
You'll need,
600.
yes.
we believe in the mission and we understand that, we get the money, so we help you get the money to pay the fee.
Yeah. So Rachel's gonna be here. So if you want to talk,
Yeah.
brother, you remind me of my grandfather, man. You just give full throat answers. That the granddad, where's the bathroom? And well, see, you go. I'm teasing you.
You sound like a wise man.
Yes. You make a laugh and then you turn right. So I think you had a question here.
Thank you. Ren from New Destiny Housing. I'm curious to hear more of the story about how you envisioned and are making the 24/7 childcare.
Don't ask that. I'm teasing. So Brian.
Like the first phase, picking our provider, where once we get out of the ground, we're going to run an RFP process. So actually, I'm going to divert also to the question because I want to partially answer your question from my own experiences. The facility is designed to accommodate it, the spatial needs, the outdoor space, the ability to put heads on beds. So the spatial needs are there, the capital is there, and our backing is there. We need the right operator.
Right.
So, and we have a tremendous amount of experience as developers, with OCFS, et cetera. So an example is we call it in the office the free brain drain. So we redeveloped for Covenant House, a brand new turnkey 80,000 square foot facility, debt-free, and funded an endowment by purchasing a portion of their property in Hell's Kitchen in a 2-phase, actually 3-phase redevelopment. And Covenant House came to us 6 years ago and said, our facility's outdated, it's too large, it's antiquated, it's too expensive to run, we're missing X, Y, and Z. Gotham, you do a lot of not-for-profit work. How do we do this? And so we brought our team in architects and engineers and contractors, and so any development is idea, concept, proof of concept, spend money, due diligence, design, engineer, finance, execute, turn over, and operate. It's a lifeline, right? And so the light bulb, like IUV, is an idea, proof of concept, and then go. So if a not-for-profit or a church owns land, there is a great asset. There's a lack of liquidity. So I would not recommend any not-for-profit without a development consultant or a competent developer with experience working with not-for-profits and their boards because that's partnership to do this. But I would never recommend that the not-for-profit outlay their capital to undertake an endeavor. It could bankrupt an entity if they haven't done it before. Partner. Go to HPD, go to Development Consult, go to an RFP to a series of developers. But that's what we're going to do with daycare. We're not daycare operators. What we did is we planned for it. We're going to go find the right partners to do it. And that's going to require going to OCFS and get the licensing and running it because it's innovative. So the mayor had the blueprint 24/7 childcare. My guess is Pastor Bernardo, the mayor, talked about it 4 or 5 years ago when the blueprint came out and we ran with it. So we need a partner.
So let me get the where's Wilfredo? All right, I got one more comment on this point. Everybody on the stage does transactions, but they're not transactional. And that's a really important distinction because the reason the 24-hour daycare is important to pursue and the reason we need or don't yet have a shelter equity product is because we have too many people who do transactions and they are transactional. And let me just give you one analogy. About 2 months ago, we had a guy in one of our buildings who we contract with who's an exterminator. That's all he does. He's supposed to go in the apartment, spray, and leave. He went in this apartment in one of our buildings where there was a couple who was renting with little kids. And they were doing crack, and the kids were unsupervised. Now, he could have just gone in there and sprayed and just gone about his business. What did he do? He left. He went down to the property management office, and he said, listen, there are people upstairs, and let me tell you what's happening. We were able to get ACS involved. He does transactions. He's not transactional. The problem in the affordable housing space is people do tax credits, they do lending. For 2 years or more than that, I've been trying to get people who are tax credit investors, syndicators, lenders who make tons of money doing these projects to consider doing a product where they would invest equity in shelters. And know why they don't do it? They don't need to. They're getting what they need. They don't have the vision to see what is needed, the big picture vision. What they are doing is just transactional. They're doing transactions and they're transactional. And so when you decide who to do business with, do yourself a favor and find people in those institutions who are not transactional people, who actually care about what they do. And that's a totally different thing than just finding somebody to give you some money. And the reason we're in the situation we're in is because we aren't making that judgment. And I will say, TD, I know Matt, I was with them and have done business with them many years. TD does transactions, but they're not transactional people. And I really appreciate that. And that's part of the reason we're here today and doing this, because they think different. So anyway, that's it. Thank you for coming.